Oof. Let's play, yes, the first one.
Everything house music, propelling sounds with meaning, delivering on emotions that lack feeding. Intact, your souls have no peeling. Everything house music, casting spells on unlearned beings, bringing them to the underground. These are grooves that are worthy. House music is where it's at, believe me. Everything house music.
And happy Tuesday, everyone. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to Everything House Music. The very first one of the year. Yes, the very first one of the year. And we have the honor, we have the privilege and the pleasure of having Richard Enshaw as our first guest. The legend himself. This man has been in the game for quite a while, for a good time. I actually thought of playing one of his songs that he released 23 years ago, but I was like, perhaps we'll play it sometime during the show. But thanks everyone for being here already. Thank you for coming through. It's gonna be a banger, of course, as always. Good chats, good conversations, good music, good music. So if you're more than welcome to come up and grab the mic and be a part of this chat that we're gonna have with our guest this evening. You've got some good questions, please bring them forth. If you'd like to perhaps share some flowers, you are more than welcome. So thank you, and please do feel at home. Everything House Music is a very safe space. So, but before I go anywhere further, I'd like to welcome our guest and actually test his mic out. Mr. Richard, good
Hi
evening.
guys. Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect. Nice to be here. How's it all going?
No, all good, all good, all good here. We're glad that you're here with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. No, I've been looking forward to this, looking forward to a good old chit chat.
No, lovely, lovely, lovely to hear that.
Just making sure everything's all good, everything, the mic is good, because I've got my AirPods on, so the children can't interrupt me.
Oh, we know some little ones can interrupt, right? But
Oh,
everything
yes,
is
they can.
good.
Good, good, good.
Everything sounds good. I hope hopefully the music was good on your side too. Did that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounded fine. Yeah, I had a momentary Wi-Fi issue, but I've ditched it to go onto normal mobile cellular, so it's all good now.
Oh, okay, lovely, lovely. Just to share with everyone in the space, I mean, the first song I played was that vocal mix that you did for Back Together Again for
Yes.
Tony Monreal, which was released in 2015.
Was it really? Gosh, the time flies.
Absolutely, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. But it still sounds so fresh and it still sounds so amazing.
Well, I think that's one of the beauties of the more soulful side of house music, and the deep soulful side. You know, it's because it's so musically driven, and very often with traditional instrumentation, there's no reason for it to sound dated, really, because it's not so heavily weighted on crazy synth sounds and production techniques. You know, it's live bass, it's keys, it's drums, it's vocals, it's guitars and horns, um, and generally they've been the same for forever, really. So it's nice to hear the older stuff. I'd like to think perhaps that maybe the experience and skill set has improved over the years in terms of mixing and all the sort of the technical side, but musically, it's nothing's really changed in 20 however many years I've been doing it. So it's nice to hear the older stuff still sounding fresh.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. I mean, I was going through your discography and I was like, okay, which one should I play? Which one should I play? But I'm a big fan of Tony, so I thought let's play the vocal mix first. And I mean, do you actually remember when you made the song with him? And how was the experience? If you may share with us, please.
Um, I do remember it well. I remember it was my studio has gone through 3 stages of rebuild. Um, and I did this remix in during sort of its second phase, as it were. Um, and Ollie Lazarus sent me the vocals and said, "Rich, see what you can do with this. And I was like, okay. And it was one of those situations where I spent a long time just playing. I was just jamming on the keys. I just put a very, very basic drum beat down and I was just jamming on the keys. And because it's quite a slow track, I felt that I needed to kind of create the pace by effectively speeding up the phrasing. And it just happened very, very quickly. You know, that I had the great vocals; they were already there. I didn't need to mess around with those. I had the horns; I wanted to incorporate those. So it was just a case of finding that phrase that I felt worked across the whole thing, apart from the little middle section where it kind of changes key. But it was a relatively quick process. It normally is, to be honest, when I'm doing remixes. The initial idea happens very quickly, but then, you know, I'll take a lot of time refining it and injecting any very slight changes in sort of musical turnarounds at certain places. And then it gets down to the really geeky stuff when I get down to the mixing and doing all the finer points of the production. So, you know, I suppose on average, I'd probably take at least a week on a remix, if, you know, full days. But the actual idea itself, sort of musically, can often happen in the first hour or two of the first day. On the odd occasion, you know, the final mix that you actually hear that's actually out there being played and being streamed and bought, whatever, might well be the fourth or fifth idea that I've gone through to end up where it needed to be. Rest assured, all the previous ideas never go to waste. I always save those, and they go into my little pot of you never know when this might come in handy. Which has often happened, you know, when I'll go back to those old ideas that I did for a remix. It didn't quite work out, and then I collaborate with a new vocalist, and then it becomes, you know, a really successful record in its own right. So I never waste anything in the process. That's for sure.
And I mean, 20 odd years also, I mean, through this process of you making music, and we're in 2023 now. Do you reckon, I mean, your stance, your standard of making music has changed, or have you kept the same way, or perhaps giving yourself time to adapt to modern times also?
I would like to think that I've always maintained a high level of expectation of myself for what I deliver. I'm very aware that as time passes, you know, we improve, we learn. Every day's a school day, and I'm always learning a new technique of how to do something, or maybe, you know, you change your EQ or you swap out the compressor for something different, and it slightly alters the character, or you buy a new mixing desk. You know, all of these things contribute to the progress of sound. But I will always expect 100% and nothing less from myself on every single project. Even if I listen to some of the older stuff, you know, I'll pick it apart, you know, until the cows come home and think, well, that could have been better, that could have been better, that could have been better. But I also remember it's like, but that was 18 years ago. And back then, the equipment I had was X, and I was 18 years younger, so 18 years less experienced. So I know for a fact that I gave it 100% at the time. But I'm very, very aware that, you know, as I continue to make music, there's always something new that I'll learn. I'm quite happy with the equipment side of things, though. I'm sure my bank account is really happy that I've stopped buying stuff. But I'm really happy with everything that I have to use now, both, you know, hardware and my synths, and also the software and the things that I use and the process that I have in place. I like the results. So really, it's just now a case of hopefully the more experienced I get, the better things will sound. In terms of modern day requirements, we all know that there seems to be uh, some sort of crazy idea that we have to release loads and loads and loads and loads of music all the time. And rightly or wrongly, I don't subscribe to that. I think that music matures in its own time, and a record is ready when it's ready. And I think anything less than that, then you're not really writing and producing music for the right reasons. I'm very aware this is a subjective opinion. I that's how I feel. If I was of a mindset where I had to make music and release, 3, 4 records or more a month, I wouldn't be giving each one of those records my absolute fullest attention, my 100%, which is what I expect of myself. So I think, due to my own sort of personal approach to music making, I simply couldn't make that much music and release that much music. I just don't think I'd be able to, because I'd have a serious issue with knowing that it wasn't the absolute highest level that I could achieve at the time.
No, I totally agree with you on that one. I think right now we're overwhelmed with just way too much music,
There's a
and
lot of
most
music.
times
I don't
there's
think
too
it's the
much.
right,
There's way
not
too
right.
much.
It's not right or wrong. No, I think that's an important point to make. I'm not saying that for people or labels that are releasing loads and loads and loads of music all the time, is wrong. It's not a bad thing. I mean, it's a bad thing for me. I'm a different generation of music maker. We couldn't make music. We physically couldn't make music at the same rate back in the late 90s. The equipment was different. Some of us were still operating off tapes. Uh, those of us that were lucky enough were using early versions of Pro Tools. And hard drives were smaller. Everything was smaller, noisier, clunkier, longer. It just simply wasn't possible to make music as quickly. And obviously, the distribution methods have changed. Back then, you'd have to put your stuff onto a DAT tape. You'd then mail your DAT tape to the mastering house via FedEx. Then you'd get your metalheads back. You'd approve the test pressings. Then they'd go to manufacture. So there was a huge process involved just on one record. Whereas now you can upload things pretty much straight away. So it's just the way that the environment we're operating in now is. So I don't think it's, I think it's because I'm of an older generation of producer that I choose not to go the same route. I think that music deserves more attention. And very recently, I did put onto social media that I am a music maker. That's how I define what it is that I do. I'm not a content generator. And I hear way more frequently than I'd like a lot of people referring to the music that they either make or they release as content. Get more content out there. And I just somehow find that desensitizes the connection with the message and the music itself. It's just become a very dull, grey, lifeless asset. It's just a thing. It's a statistic. It's something that contributes to analytics. I don't like that, and that's just the way I am. I know it works. This model, it works for a lot of people. It gets a lot of people gigs. It gets a lot of people visibility if they're labels and whatnot. But I'm just I'm a soppy old fool at the end of the day. My reasons for making music are much more passionate, much more romantic, I suppose, in a way.
I like that indeed. Before I exhaust perhaps my voice out, just like to mention to you, Richard, that we are. I think I've mentioned a little bit, but we are a fan-based podcast, and we're just literally fans of music. We love music so much that uh, we have interviews about it. We have chats about it on Twitter Spaces, and there's some good regulars here in the space today. Perhaps we're gonna have questions for you, and there's maybe perhaps have some flowers to give to you. So thank you again for accepting our invite.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'll start with Papa Lissid. I think Papa Lissid has been waiting for this for quite a while. So Papa Lissid, good evening, brother. Welcome again to Everything House Music.
Evening, Lord. Volkman, how you doing, man?
Good, and how are you, brother?
I'm good, thank you. Evening, Mr. Richard Anshaw. How you doing?
A very good evening to you. I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm okay as well, thank you. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, it's a pleasure talking to you. You know, I'm your biggest fan, I would like to think.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, but I've been following you for actually quite a while. You were part of a duo, right? Spirit Chaser. Is that thing? Is it still a thing? Like the group Spirit Chaser? Do you still
very
speak
much
to the
is.
other member?
Yeah, it very much is a thing. We have been very busy the last sort of 2 or 3 years, doing a lot of writing.
Okay.
And the new album, which is called Always for Love, is basically finished. The first single is going to be out next month. And yeah, the album will follow after sort of 3 or 4 singles in the summer.
Okay, that's beautiful. I mean, one can actually see the difference or differentiate between Spirit Chaser to what you do as an indie, right? You do a bit of what soulful house, right? And Spirit Chaser, it's more electronic. Please
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Is there a reason why maybe there's like a clear distinctive sound, maybe?
I've always loved making music of any genre.
Okay.
When I was a kid, you know, sort of maybe I was 14, 15, and I started to write music using old samplers and synths, anything I could lay my hands on, really, beg, scrape, and borrow.
Okay.
And I loved making music, whether it was, you know, ambient, whether it was dance music, whether it was drum and bass or crazy jazz funk stuff, whatever it was always something that intrigued me. So when I met Mark Bamford back in 1999, our music tastes aligned in a slightly different way than my music tastes align with other people on the more soulful stuff.
Cool.
And so what really happened is he was DJing at a venue locally, and I was like, all right, mate, how's it going? You know, I'm really liking the music you're playing. He was probably playing some early 90s stuff, some of the early Sasha, Digweed, all that kind of thing. And I was just saying that, you know, I was really into this sort of music. And we just decided we'd get into the studio together to see what happened. And say that was 23 years ago. Crazy to think. And you know, when we get in the studio together, there's a different part of my brain, there's a different sort of excitement that comes out when we make that sort of music. In the same way that when I'm collaborating with other artists or other producers that may be you know, different genres, you know, it's all the same. It's very much there's a little bit a different part of me that comes out and wants to explore certain musical direction.
Nice. Right. I also wanted to ask you something. Yeah. Dan, can I just maybe pause a bit because I actually lost my thought process. I just wanted to ask you something very, very important. Oh yeah, actually, sorry. Yeah. 11 years ago, actually, you gave us a song called "People Are People," right? Do you still remember that classic?
People Are People was 2002.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Yeah, 20
What
years
was
ago now.
the 20? There you go. Sorry, 20 years. My bad. What was the thought process in terms of you making that song? Because it's a classic and it's still relevant even now. What went through your mind 20 years ago?
Well, oddly, People Are People is a track that was put together out of 2 completely different records. I had written a record with Dave. Well, didn't write it with Dave. Dave came in and did a session on the guitar, and it was. I've even got the old Logic session somewhere. It's called Latin Dave, I think I called it, and it was much more of a sort of a, you know, Afrobeat Latin kind of vibe, and it was all going well. But for some reason, there was something I couldn't quite put my finger on it, I couldn't quite get it over the line. So I just sort of put it on the side as I'll come back to that one. And I had another record that I was doing where I had a singer called Jamie come in, and she did a load of vocals, of which there is a phrase within that recording which I chopped in half, which became the vocal hook from People Are People.
People everywhere. Beautiful.
And it was just one of those crazy days where I got into the studio and I was like, I wonder if I transpose the guitar down a semitone and then chuck it on this record and see what happens.
How would it sound? Yeah.
And that literally is how People Are People started. It was
That's
just
incredible.
it was an idea. It was like, I wonder what will happen if I do this. And it just worked. I was like, oh, cool. Now I've managed to finish 2 tracks as one.
Wow.
And yeah, and that was literally how People Are People was born.
Wow. Incredible. Okay, one last more question before I leave. You've been in the game for over 15 to 20 years. Are you big on mentorship? Do you have any up and coming artists maybe that you're taking under your wing?
To date, we haven't done so. Not because we don't want to or don't want to be able to offer it. I suppose we've just been so sort of busy and wrapped up with, running all the labels and doing all the writing and the production, that it's just a simple case of time. And of course, I've got a young family as well, so they literally take up so much time.
Okay, cool.
So it's one of those things. We do our very best to support, emerging artists as best as we can. We've actually just got some music from an artist who is very much emerging, and we're going to help bring that package together to put on our 151 label. So we do like to work, we don't go around like a lot of labels do, picking the low-hanging fruit and just going, oh, they're already established, let's sign that stuff, or let's take that record. We do like to introduce new artists into what we're doing. So I suppose in a roundabout way, we are kind of mentoring a little bit.
Okay, cool. No further questions from me. Thank you so much for the music. I'll keep on supporting you. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Lloyd and Vox. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the questions.
It's a pleasure, sir.
No, shout out, Papa Lisidi. Thank you for coming through, brother. Thank you for coming through yet again to everything house music. So I think right about now, let's play a song. And actually, let's play the exact same song that Papa Lisidi was mentioning in some of the questions. People Are People, which is a release from 2002, so it's literally over 20 years ago. Imagine that. And I believe, and I believe, Mr. Richard, is that you actually re-released the package with Defected last year, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And was there any reason, perhaps, actually re-releasing it with Defected? Was there any, maybe partnership that you actually reckoned that you need to do it with them?
Well, Defected manages Soulfuric Recordings now. So Brian had already sort of spoken to me about doing a re-release of People Are People for its 20th anniversary, to which I added a slightly different version, a bit more choppy, maybe a bit more current, perhaps. And obviously it came out on Soulfuric Deep, but obviously through the Defected channels.
And how has that partnership worked out? How has that partnership worked out since Soulfuric is under Defected?
Well, I'm not in any position to know or to say how that relationship works with them, but it's Defected have got a great distribution, marketing, and promotional network, and Brian and Tappert and Simon Dunmore have a long history, because of course the very first record that Defected ever put out was Soul Searcher, I Can't Get Enough. So Soulfuric has played a big part in the foundations of Defected. So I guess inevitably, with how Defected has grown and evolved, that Soulfuric would eventually fall under their management. And as I understand it, is going really, really good. it's different for me. It was a different experience because the record was already an established record. So as someone that perhaps is releasing on Soulfuric as a new artist, I couldn't tell you, but we'll see. I've got a lot of new music knocking around, so it's very possible, and I've been asked that there will be something new from Earnshaw HQ on Soulfuric in the near future.
No, great stuff, great stuff. And talking about Defected, quite recently, they took one of our own, Kid Funk,
Yeah,
which is some great news. I mean, for the world of house music, the world of music. So shout out to Kid Funk for actually
massively. Yeah, I mean that's a great
it.
opportunity, and we'd worked with Alan way back, in the Soul Candy days after the initial success of Spirit Chaser, These Tears. So we had a lot of strong connections there. So it's great to see him and Defected committed to expanding the way they have. So yeah, it's best of luck and good wishes to that one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before I play the music, which version would you like us to play, Mr. Richard?
The shortest
Which version?
one.
The shortest one.
The shortest one.
Which is the first song on the EP. Yeah, this is track one. Okay, no, we'll go for that. We'll go for that. Shout out to everyone who's here. Thank you so much for coming through and joining us. I even see Sabrina Child is here. Sabrina Child.
Hi, Sabrina.
Amazing. Yeah, the amazing vocalist herself. She's also here in the space. Thank you so much. And shout out to everyone else who's here. Thank you for joining us. You're more than welcome, yes, to grab the mic and come in and be a part of the conversation. Share some flowers. If you'd like perhaps to ask some questions to our guest, you're more than welcome. Don't be shy. Don't be shy at all. So for now, I'm gonna play People Are People, Revibe, the Revibe version, which was re-released. Yeah, which was re-released and Defected last year. Please enjoy. And thank you again for joining us on Everything House Music.
Everything, house, music, propelling sounds with meaning, delivering on emotions that lack feeding, intact. Your souls have no peeling. Everything, house, music, casting spells on unlearned beings, bringing them to the underground. These grooves are worthy, cause house music is where it's at. Believe me, everything, house, music.
And that was People Are People, the Revibe. Amazing, amazing, amazing song. You can actually check out the EP. Was released last year on Defected. Super, super track selection. Couple of different Tuesdays. There's also a jazzy one that perhaps if you're a jazz artist, jazz appella version that they can enjoy. There's also a dub mix. So yeah, shout out to Mr. Richard for
Thank
giving
you.
us some amazing music.
Well, I should do my best.
No, you've outdone yourself, honestly. Over the years, you certainly have. And
Well,
no one can say anything else besides that.
well, so we just hope, I'm sure I speak on behalf of all musicians that we consolidate life experiences and passion for musical adventures, and just hope that we can put everything that we can and want to into the product. I've said product, you see, everyone's saying product all the time, into the music that we create. And that's all we can ask of ourselves. And I think as long as there's enough of us doing that, I think it's a great place to be, and to be a part of the people that are listening to the music as well.
Before I share the mic with Lloyd, just regarding regarding the the division, perhaps not the division per se, but the bridge between the artist and the fans. Do you think over the years, seeing that we're in the digital years now, digital times, do you think over the years perhaps um, we've still been able to grasp your love of making the passion of the music? We've still been able to support you as good as perhaps we used to 15, 20 years ago, or perhaps things have changed?
Oh, things have definitely changed. In terms of my relationship with those that have supported and listened to the music, there's a much more, like, for the very nature that we're having this conversation now on this thing called Twitter Spaces, on an app called Twitter, on a phone that's no bigger than my old school calculator from the 1980s, is a remarkable evolution in how we connect with our fan base. We still managed to do this back in the 90s. It was just very different. The clubbing experience was very different. People that went to clubs went to listen to music. It wasn't about, let's go to this club because it looks really nice and I can take pictures of myself all night long and hashtag the shit out of everything on my Instagram. It's not like that back then. Everyone was much more engaged in the music. There is a very different kind of clubbing experience now. Those sorts of clubs do still exist, of course, but as generations evolve, I look at my eldest now. He's 13, and listen to the music that he listens to. I mean, I showed him a cassette tape the other day, and honestly, he just looked at me with this look of utter bewilderment of what it was. And I was saying, everything is just too easy and quick nowadays. There's this like intrinsic lack of patience, I think. So, if you sent out, let's just go from, I'm sort of twisting the story a little bit here, but let's imagine there's a 16-year-old Richard Earnshaw sending out a demo tape to a label on a cassette tape that I had lovingly recorded, copied, prepared over the course of probably 2 or 3 days, posted, and waiting in anticipation for days, if not weeks, for hopefully a response, which I always got a response. I was, just there was no expectation on my part to expect that to happen very quickly. Whereas now, there are some artists that I've communicated with who send a demo, and if you don't get back to them within like half an hour, they get the right hump with you, and I'm just like, guys, just slow down a little bit here. It's becoming, listening to music is not just a case of, is it really loud and is it a banger? Is it going to be a dance floor, belter or whatever it is? For us and for me, at the labels here, it's about listening to the song, listening to the message within it, connecting with what the artist is trying to say or the singer is trying to say. And that is a process that doesn't happen in half an hour, and I think that there is a translation with that into the connection with the fan base as well. People now, you see it all the time. You go to clubs, they're all too quick. They'll go to see a DJ because of one record that they heard on TikTok or one record that they heard on Spotify. And if you don't play that record, they're like, well, why have I even come here? It's like, well, because this DJ happens to be a very skilled artist, and would probably be really, really happy if you would show them some respect and listen to the full 2 hours or 3 hours or however long they're playing for. That's what happened in the 90s. I was there, and it was the best clubbing experience. It was the best time of my life ever. The journey through the music and listening to what some of these DJs were doing. Now it's all becoming a little bit too shiny in a way. It's all a little bit too pre-packaged and marketed. You see all these Instagram videos of these DJs. They're not sweating. They look like they've just come out of a salon. I'm sorry, but if I'm not a sweaty mess, stinking, sopping wet, t-shirt wringing out sweat by the end of my set, then I haven't done my job properly. That's the difference. So you've got a very different split, I think, in your fan base now. You've got the real, the fans that will stick with you with everything that you do, every bump, every twist and turn, every record that you do that perhaps didn't quite work out, but they're still there with you. They understand what you're trying to do because they've understood everything that you've done in the past. And then you've got the other fan base that latch on to something that you've done and it happens to have been very successful, and suddenly you're in their Spotify playlists. But they're not really there. They're not your fans. They're just your listeners. That's what they are. I think there's a difference between fans and listeners. I think ultimately, in a very roundabout way, is what I'm trying to say. We have fans and we have listeners, and the two operate very, very differently. And we engage as artists. We engage with them very, very differently as well.
I like that analogy. It makes total sense. So we also have a space called the deep house space, and what we generally ask, from ourselves, the hosts, and the fans, is support these musicians as good as you can, in terms of purchasing the music, going to those events where they're playing at. But in most cases, what you find is that people would only just stream your music than actually to come and actually watch, see you play, hear you play, actually talk to you, and actually say something to you. So I like that analogy a lot. So thanks for sharing that.
Oh, I think it's just it's very much as a music creator, as an artist, there's so many things that I want to try still. There are so many things that I need to explore and release and see what's going on. My listeners, which when you look at the statistics, are in whatever numbers, they're probably not going to be that interested in that, because they'll be like, yeah, but what about the track that you did that was really big that I really liked? We just want the same but different. It's like, yeah, that's cool. There's more of that too, but I've got this other stuff going on. And that's where your fans come in. They're the ones that go, hit me with it. I'll sit here and I'll listen to this. If you asked a fan, would you please listen to my new album from start to finish in the order of the the story is being told in this order. Would you please listen from start to finish? Your fan will listen to it from start to finish, and if they're not sure, they'll listen to it again from start to finish. Your listener will just pick out their favorite track and listen to that. I think that's where it gets slightly frustrating as the creator, that you just, especially when you're working on an album, because say we've got a new Spirit Chaser album coming. I've got 2 albums I'm working on myself, and there are some surprises in there. I'm going to say that in terms of genre. Like, for example, there is a drum and bass record in there, but it's probably going to remind you of things like Represent by Ronnie Size, much more jazz influenced, all that kind of stuff. Now, I want people to listen to that. I don't want them to discard it because it's not a traditional sounding Richard Earnshaw house record. And I know that my fans will. My listeners, well, they might get on board eventually. We'll see. But that's where that relationship is different. Where you're, in terms of who the kind of music that you're creating, and where I'm going to, with the fans that I know that have been there for a long time, that have supported the music for 20 plus years, have listened and maybe just gone, yeah, that was a bit of a dodgy release, wasn't it, Rich? It's like, yeah, do you know what? I wasn't, thinking back on it, it wasn't the best thing I'd ever done. But never mind, we battle on, we move on to the next thing, and we improve, and we evolve. And those fans are always there, and that's such a great thing for me, because I'm getting feedback from them. Listeners come and go. One minute they're listening to your stuff because your hot shit track on whatever playlist was doing really well, and then the next track they're not interested, and you've lost them. They've gone anyway. So it's different, and it's a really rewarding experience as an artist, the relationship that you have with your true fans.
I can imagine. I can imagine. But so my next question is, Richard, do you reckon perhaps are we as human beings getting enough information? Are we getting educated enough about what music is then? Right? Because as you just mentioned, it's easy for anyone now to just stream a song and like, this is crap, whatever. But I think perhaps does that person not have enough education about music to actually enjoy what they're listening to?
I think there is so much information. There is so much noise out there that it's very easy as a listener to become sort of ear blind in a way. That unless you're already well established, it's very, very difficult to break through that noise. And some artists have been very creative with how they've used social media in order to break through that noise. I'm not sure. That's a tricky one, because I think it all depends on that, on how we are as listeners. I mean, I'm a different sort of listener myself. I frustrate myself as a listener because I can't listen to anything just on its own merit. A lot of the time, I'm constantly analysing things, and if only they pitched that, that rim shot down a semitone, that would go in tune slightly more with the conga, and da-da-da. So I'm forever sort of picking things, but I think that the information is there. It's just there's so much of it. We've got to find new and interesting ways of being able to channel it and focus it into the people that actually need it.
No, thanks for that. Thanks for that. And I'm also asking that question because right now in SA, so we've had a completely new genre of dance music, and it's completely taken over literally everything and everywhere. So from young people to old people, it's literally everywhere. But it's sort of taken in different places as a trend. So We're listening to it because it's trending and it's vibing and it's nice. But do people actually understand the music behind it? Are we actually listening to the talent behind the music? Are we listening? Are we reading the lyrics as they are and understanding them? Are we feeling it inside? Or are we just listening to music? Are we just streaming it and it's just okay? So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think it's, there are, by the nature of trends themselves, when something becomes popular, certainly in smaller scenes and underground scenes, they, by, I suppose, they're a victim of their own success in a way. They become bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it attracts more people, and then you end up with a huge audience of only with only probably a very small percentage of them actually truly understand, where that music has come from and what it actually means. We see it all the time now. There's certainly, in London, for example, there's a lot more soulful house going on and all the disco stuff. And like, for example, there are some, one particular very successful brand of event that is very disco led. And I've been to many of their events, and I can honestly say that so many of those that are there don't fully understand the history of the music that is being played. And that's not a good thing, sorry, it's not a bad thing, but I do wonder, it's like, if you understood a little bit more about why this is happening and why this is, presented to you the way it is, it would probably improve their experience. But that is a case of wanting to educate yourselves, I think, or whether you just want to just soak up the vibe and have a wicked time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, let me pass on the mic to the co-host of the space today, Lloyd, who's also the host of the Deep House Space, which actually happens each and every Friday at 12 midday in SA time. I think that's 10 a.m. your side, Richard. Yeah, 10 a.m. in the morning. And I think we should actually send you an invite when you release Spirit Chaser. That would be fun. That would be fun to actually have you on the space when
Yeah,
Spirit
definitely.
Chaser comes out. So, Lloyd, the platform is yours, brother. Please unmute.
So, good evening, guys. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm gonna complain, Voxman. Obviously, I'm gonna complain. I had to wait. Let me see, 45 minutes just to speak. 45 minutes just to speak. I even forgot some of the questions, but it's okay. It's okay. It's Voxman. Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm good, Lloyd. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. I had actually forgotten about the space, guys. I was busy because we have other accounts, the deeper space. So I was busy on Instagram. I'm tweeting videos. What I usually do is that I take a clip of whoever's dancing and I put a song. Maybe I'd put your song, Richard, and then I post it all over the platforms on TikTok, even here on Twitter and even on Instagram. Usually I post the songs that have not yet been released as yet. So I'm creating the hype behind the song. So I was busy doing that with other
Good.
songs that I got yesterday. Now I'm coming back, I'm like, man, there's something I'm forgetting. What's happening today? So when I check my notification, I see, oh, the space is on. I'd forgotten. But I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. So my question, Richard, is that I heard you talking about transposition of an instrument, a semitone down on people are people, right? I think that creates a melody in a song, right? So listening to people are people that was created when 2002, that's 20 years ago, and it still bangs today. So my question is, what do you think is the importance of having a melody in a song? Because if you look at the songs that were released between the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, and the songs that are being released today, they lack melody.
I think I mean, this sort of connects with what we were saying previously about trend. and obviously we've seen a huge amount of tech house over the last handful of years, which is almost designed purely to go to the drop with a long snare roll and then to hit a beat, for a festival crowd. I think that melody is definitely something that is starting to make an appearance, and thank goodness for that, because I'm sure for the last few years that a lot of singer-songwriters have been wondering what the hell is going on when all these massive tunes and all these big festivals are going on and there's just no vocals or very little vocal. And I'm all about the vocal, all about the song, and all about the melody. So from a personal point of view, I think it's brilliant that we're starting to see more of this happen, certainly with the sort of the more soulful side of stuff and all the new disco. It's great to see that the role of the songwriter is becoming a thing again, because it's been missing for far too long. Musically, when you refer to like the 80s and the 90s, there was a lot more, music was, I suppose it was just, we're kind of going, it's all cyclic. We're sort of hitting that cycle again. But it's also important, as a lot of people do ask me, oh, you must hate tech house, or the last one was obviously EDM. Oh, you must hate EDM. There's this sort of coexistence of genre and trend, and because it is all cyclic, every single time a piece, a genre becomes popular, it's popular out of the need for change usually. And so for that change to continually happen, we need all these different genres. So I would never make a tech house record. I would never play a tech house record. And I would never, out of my own steam, go to a tech house club or a festival. But I appreciate its contribution to the cycle, because without it, it all kind of runs in tandem with the generations. A lot of the kids are getting older now, and they want more. They're maturing. They're looking for something else. So I think we sit tight for just a little while longer. We're going to find there's going to be a whole lot more beautifully melodic, singer-songwriter driven dance music.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So what I want to know is, do you think talent is enough for production, or do you also need to learn the theoretical side of music, understanding how to transpose instruments, semitones there, crotchets there and there? Do you think those things are important if you have talent?
It's a difficult question to answer, because as someone that does understand all the theoretical side of music, I don't know any different. So I know that understanding the all that side of stuff helps me with my music making. I don't know what it's like to make music without that knowledge, but I do know a lot of producers that don't have that knowledge, and they're equally skilled in the studio. They know what they want to hear. So I think that in the bigger picture is that a lot of producers will all been living very insular lives for too long, I think, and the days of getting back into the studio together is where all that real magic actually happens. For example, Spirit Chaser, going back to the way that happens and the sound that we have, that happens because Mark and I get in the studio together. We never work on Spirit Chaser independently of each other. So, obviously These Tears was a huge record in South Africa. And that happened because we got into the studio together. It didn't happen because he was, on the toilet or making a sandwich whilst I was doing whatever, or vice versa. It happened because we were in the studio together. So, and Mark doesn't have an understanding of the theoretical side of stuff, but he more than equally contributes to the sound that we have as Spirit Chaser. So it is a teamwork thing. And I think that's what needs to be made more available. Of course, the COVID thing didn't help. We were all literally told to and shut away. But I think as coming out of that, there is a need and a desire for people to want to be with other people, because when you're in the studio on your own, you can only ask yourself, is this idea any good? You need those other people in the room, somebody to say that is absolutely banging, or if you're jamming on the keys, for someone else to say, stop that thing you just played there, go back to that, hit that. You pick up stuff, and very often that's down to somebody that's perhaps got the hasn't got their brain clouded with all the should that be that key, or should it be that key, or that scale, or that scale. They've just got a vision for the sound that they're looking for. So that's why those sorts of partnerships can really, really work. Somebody that's the studio geek, the one with all the, all the musical training, and then somebody that just has a passion and just knows the music and can hear what that end result is going to be like. And then that combination of the two things usually ends up in a fabulous result.
So I wanted to know, in terms of remixing, because I think you've done quite a lot of remixes. What
One or two.
motivates? Yeah, those I mean, those are good. What motivated you to actually make a remix? What intrigued your mind to say, I need to remix the song?
Well, first and foremost, when somebody approaches you, whether it's an artist or a label, and says, "Rich, we'd really like you to get involved and remix this record," that's a real privilege to be in a position to be asked that, because they have more often than not thought about who can bring something to this track that is different to what we already have, who can turn this into something different that's going to be a real positive benefit to the whole package of mixers that they have. And so, the process for me starts with, again, it's the vocal. When the vocal is there and I'm listening to the vocal and I'm connecting with what's being sung and how it's being sung, it makes my life well easy, because all I have to do is to present something to allow that vocal to really shine in its own right. So it all starts, for remixing, it all starts with the vocal.
Okay. There's this thing that they call, I think they call it mashup now, where you put a certain vocal to a certain beat of an original song. So let's say, for example, you take these tears vocals to another song that also has a vocal, then you remove. So they call it mashup, right? So have you ever been to a place whereby you hear a beat and then a certain vocal comes to mind, or you've created the beat from scratch and a certain vocal comes to mind?
I've never been a massive mashup person myself. I mean, normally, like, for example, I suppose there is an extreme to that situation where I've heard a vocal, like, for example, here's a perfect example. Juliet McKnight, the Diamond Life, Louis Vega. When I heard that track originally, I was like, oh, I really love that vocal. There's something I've got an idea. So I copied the acapella off the 12-inch, and then did my own remix. So it's like an extreme mashup. I wasn't taking anything that was already done and popping the vocal on top. I made my own remix for it, and I've done that quite a few times with tracks that I love, and sometimes they actually get signed to the label. You know, I play them out, somebody hears it and goes, "Oh, what version of that is that?" And I say, "Oh, it's just my own special VIP version. You know, it's not for sale, it's not to stream, I'm not handing it out, it's just my thing." And then next minute you get a phone call or an email from the label owner going, "I've heard that you've got a version of this tune. Could we have a proper listen to it, please?" And then you do a deal, and then it becomes an official thing. So I have done that a few times. So I suppose, yeah, in a way, those are like extreme mashups.
Nice. That's what I wanted to know because I somehow felt you've done it before. But
Yeah.
that's quite interesting. Let me see who's here. Okay, there isn't much producers on the space. I was gonna say they should do the same. Just remix the song, and because they don't reply to emails, these record labels, they'll hear it on the dance floor. Sure, Vox. I think I'm done. Well, I'm not done, but yeah. Yeah, I've been speaking here. 10 minutes.
No, shout out to Lloyd. Interesting take that Lloyd is saying. Just to add on what you just mentioned now. So there is guys who've done that, Richard. Music Monks made a fire remix of a song, Don Squire by Ed Jazz, and they put it out there. They put it out there for us to actually listen and to play it. But when Ed Jazz heard it, it was like, "No, please take it down." It was like, "No, no, no, no. I don't want it. Please take it down. I'm not gonna release it anyway." So it doesn't work out every time, I guess.
It
I
doesn't
mean,
work out
as
every time, no.
yeah, yeah, no,
But
absolutely.
I think that it's, you know, if there is a slightly, like, for example, when I've done, you know, some of these extreme mashups, like another example that I did, poor old Louis Vega got it. He got it right in the neck from me in the early 2000s. I did a version of Elements of Life. Again, I'd heard the vocal and I was like, "Oh, I love that vocal. I just got a desire to do something with it." So exactly the same thing. Took the a cappella off vinyl, and I did a version of it. I remember it was I gave it to, I think, 3 or 4 people just before Miami Winter Music Conference in 2004, and I didn't go myself. I was just, I don't know where I was or what I was doing, but I wasn't there. Anyway, after that week, I got a call from Rasmus Faber, and he said, "Rich, that version of Elements of Life is getting absolutely caned out in Miami. It's been played everywhere." I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." I was like, "Well, how's that possible?" Because I only gave it to like him and that, you know, I literally gave it over, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people. Of course, what happens is they then go and give it to their mate, who gives it to their mate. And ultimately, I end up getting an email from Louis Vega saying, "Oh, I've heard this being played absolutely everywhere, you know, da 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 da." So I think, you know, there's always a risk when you do an extreme mashup of something, that you feed it out there too much too quickly, and perhaps, you know, looking back at it, what I probably should have done is given Louis a copy first and foremost, even though, you know, it was only ever my intention for it to be my own VIP version. But what happened to that very, you know, my VIP version, having given it to a couple of people, was out of my control. So I think, you know, with regards to this recent example you give with Atjazz, perhaps the guys should have sent it to Atjazz first and said, "Oh, we've done this, you know, da da da." But as soon as you start uploading it everywhere, and it becomes out there available, where everyone's, you know, nicking stuff one way or the other still, whether it's like, you know, getting stuff off YouTube or however they're managing to get hold of things, and it can escalate very quickly. And I think that Certainly, it escalates a lot quicker now than it did back then in the early 2000s. Anyway, and I think it's just we all need to be a little bit more careful of how quickly these things can expand and how easily word can get back to people. Certainly, I've done one or two extreme mashups in the last few years, and the very first thing I do is to give that to the person whose vocal I've taken or the version of the thing that I've done. So they've got a heads up. So, it's not a surprise to them when somebody says, "Oh, I've heard your thing on this thing. I've never heard this version before. What is it? Everyone's playing it." It's like, well, I don't know what it is. So yeah, that's just I think just being mindful of that, I think, is really important nowadays.
Yeah, definitely. I see in the space we have Scott Diaz. Shout out to Scott Diaz.
Scott
Welcome.
Diaz.
Yes.
There he is.
Welcome.
Look.
Is here. Welcome to Everything House Music, Mr. Scott Diaz, as well as
And
the Shapeshifters. Yes, legends in the space. Thank you for coming through. Thank you for joining us. And Richard, regarding mashups, in 2013, Spirit Chaser did an amazing remix of a song by Musart.
Yes.
Musart, The Great I Am, which was released under Soul Kandi. Oof. Amazing remix package. I want to know, what relation do you have with Real People?
Well, we've known Ollie for a long time now.
Yeah.
And have worked with him on numerous things. And yeah, he basically sent us over the vocals to The Great I Am. And it was one of those tracks where perhaps we were thinking, is it a bit too soulful for a Spirit Chaser approach? But, we love a challenge. So we kind of set about trying to, add something to it that was complementing. It's all about shades, isn't it? Light and dark. And, again, quite unexpectedly, it did really, really well.
It did absolutely amazing. Sadly, the group is no longer together today. I actually tweeted
That's a
about
shame.
them today. Yeah, a couple of people left, and I think one of the partners, one of the musicians passed away. So yeah, that's a real shame. But moving right along, Richard, if you don't mind sharing with us, what's the worst thing about being a musician?
The worst thing.
Yes.
I would say that it is the worst thing about being is self-doubt. I think is one of the worst things, because we are constantly looking for this level of perfection, which doesn't exist. And on a daily basis, I stare at the screen, when I'm making records or I'm doing mixes or whatever. And, I'm searching for something which just isn't there. And I think there's a really interesting quote by Leonardo da Vinci, which is that art is never finished, it is abandoned. I think it's something to that effect. And when I first read that, it started to make a lot of sense to me that, I get to a certain part of, the process, and then I start to, the doubt creeps in. Oh, is it going to do this? Is it okay for this? How's it going to sound on the dance floor? Is it going to be okay on streaming platforms? Is it this? Is it that? And if I play that to any other person who will listen to it from a very, very different perspective than I am in terms of making it, are going to turn around and say, there is literally fuck all wrong with that. That is slamming. That's perfect. Just get on with it. And I will take that information and go, oh, I'm glad that somebody's been able to give me some objective feedback on this. And then I'll sit, and then the self-doubt creeps in again. The snare, maybe you just need to correct a EQ on this. And I'm sure that's not everyone's the worst thing. But certainly for me personally, it is I'm constantly thinking to myself, is it good enough? And that's after 20 odd years of making music. So I suspect that that's something I've just got to have to manage, moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, 20 odd years. I guess you still have those jitters in you. I mean, being shy, perhaps. I don't know. But I mean, as a legend, you are. Shout out for shout out for the time, the longevity that
Well,
you've been around.
it's a very it's a very naked experience. The first time that record, the first time you play it out, as a DJ, I'll always test out new stuff when I'm playing, and the time you cue it up for the first time, that nobody's going to know the music. They're not going to react because they have no idea what this record is. So that's cool. But for me, it's about listening to how it's translating over on the system. But then you can't help but look at people and go, are they tapping that? Are they getting into this? It's like, oh yeah, they kind of are actually. And if they're not, you start thinking, shit, why aren't they into this record? But then, at the same time, it's like, well, they don't know the record, so they might have temporarily switched off and they're waiting for the next banger. Who knows? But you're very exposed. When you're testing out new material, that's for sure. And it's definitely nerve-wracking. Even after all these years, there's never a time when I do this and you don't just kind of cocksure walk up and go, yeah, I've got this. It's always like, oh, well, here we go. Let's see what happens when I drop the new one that I've done with blah, blah, or the new collaboration with so-and-so. And then that kind of goes back into the whole self-doubt in the studio situation. Is it good enough to play out yet? Some records that I've done that have been sat on the hard drive for a very, very long time, purely because I'm like, is it good enough for me to play out yet? And then somebody will force me, say, oh, just for crying out loud, just put it out, will you? And then it becomes, a really successful record. So, those are the personal sort of doubting demons, which, one has to, maybe I should just drink more beer in the studio. I think that would probably help, because then I just forget about all the self-doubt and just crack on with it.
But with that, perhaps we'd never know then the music that you could make. Would never know. I mean, it could be the beer making the music. But thanks,
Oh,
thanks,
trust me,
thanks.
there has been some beer making some records in the past, and those have definitely never been released.
Oh, okay, okay. We'd like to hear that. We'd really like to hear that. And then in retrospect, I mean, what's the greatest thing about being a musician?
Oh gosh, I suppose, again, we all have our own reasons for why we do these things, but it's storytelling. It's being in a position to be able to convey your own life experiences in a way that you can't really say with your own mouth and words. Again, the music says a lot more about someone. Certainly says a lot more about me than anything else. And it's been able to do that, and very often those experiences that you're trying to convey, people connect with them. They've had the same experiences, or they connect in a positive way to things that you're saying within the message of a song. And I've had some very, very touching messages from people over the years, from just people that have been in a very dark place, and the music has really helped them get out of those positions. From soldiers serving in Afghanistan who've just messaged me and saying, "Oh, I was listening to this album or that record or that, and in my darkest times, in this war-torn shithole, it really helped me and gave me hope that I would actually get out of this kind of thing." And that's not why we do stuff, but when you hear that sort of thing, it really inspires you and gives you the confidence to want to do it and continue to do it, because that you are doing some good. And it's a legacy, isn't it? I suppose at the end of the day, you're leaving something behind that well after I've gone, hopefully people will still be able to connect with what I've done, and that's quite a nice feeling.
That's an amazing feeling. I think that's an amazing feeling. And one of the things that we've done regarding our spaces is the mere fact that we've put up these interviews that we're doing with these great artists, including you, the likes of Black Coffee previously, Zion. We've put them up on YouTube because we think this thing should last forever. It might help the next generation of people. It might help someone else, perhaps in terms of the conversation that we're having regarding their music or regarding their career. So the music definitely is gonna be there forever. And as you said, the legacy will live forever.
And let's hope so. It's certainly going to live longer than I will.
No, it definitely will. It definitely will. I mean, you touched some base on being being a bit anxious when you release music in this day and age. Regarding dealing with your creative blocks or performance anxiety, how do you deal with that? And on what gets you through in this day and age? Thank you.
I think certainly in terms of creative blocks, I have 2 children which are very, very distracting. So I honestly, I haven't really had much of a creative block for a while because, I've got a bit of a patchwork sort of lifestyle, really. When I first started out, I would, I'd get up, I'd get in the studio, and I knew that I'd be in that studio without interruption for 12 to 14 hours. And it's within that time frame that I would experience those sort of brick wall moments of like, I can't quite get this to work. I don't know what's going on here. But because everything is so fragmented now in terms of how much time I get in the studio, I still obviously get enough time in the studio to do my work. But it's very much like I'll be in here for an hour and then I'll go off and I'll do something else, or I've got to do this and I'll go back in for another hour. And then I'll do that, and I'm back in for another couple of hours, and then I'll do this, and I've got to take one lad to swimming club, or I've got to take him over to football club, and I'll back in the studio for another hour or two. And so I suppose out of the need to maintain some sort of work ethic, I've been able to really kind of focus in on stuff a lot more easily and quickly. So the writer's block doesn't very often happen anymore. In terms of performance anxiety, well, that never goes away, really. I mean, the minute you step on stage, whether you're behind the keyboard or behind the decks or whatever it is that you're doing, and you're not nervous, there is definitely something wrong, I think. It only takes 2 or 3 records to settle in, but there's always butterflies. Doesn't matter how many people I'm playing to. I've never suffered any sort of stage fright as such. I do know people that have, and it is extremely debilitating, to the point that a close friend of mine, had to drop out of a tour with a very well-known artist because he just had a nasty turn in the tour bus and couldn't get back on stage. And that was the end of it. And it was a very, very long and difficult journey for him to find, the kind of the root of where this is all coming from, and to be able to manage it in such a way that he could even just get back on stage again. But I've been very lucky that I've not yet, experienced anything that I've not been able to manage, and just get on with it. The show must go on, so to speak.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. We are okay in Cape Town right now. The time is 29, 21, 26. So it's like just before 9:30. My side, I believe your side, Richard. It's just after 7. 7. So I'd like us to play the last song perhaps of the space, and then we'll take the last 30 minutes or so just to finish off our conversation with you, and just to also enlighten to the people in the space. If you'd like to grab the mic again, I am asking. Probably the one time ever you'll get a chance to speak to the legend himself, Richard Enshaw. Please come up. Please come up. Don't be shy. We've got like 30 minutes left. He won't answer you DMs. He won't. He won't. He's a busy man. He's a very busy man.
Oh no, I do.
So please come up and just give your voice to everything house music today. Let's hear you, and don't be shy, of course. So I thought, Richard, can we play The Great I Am, the Spirit Chaser remix, please? Is that okay with
Of
you?
course. Yeah, of course you can.
I think Muzart was perhaps one of the greatest young um groups in SA. Yes, one of the greatest young groups in SA. They didn't actually give us enough music, but they was super great, super awesome. So I'll play The Great I Am, the Spirit Chaser remix, and then we'll come back and finish off our chat and our conversation with our guest tonight on Everything House Music, Mr. Richard Enshaw. Thank you again for coming through to Everything House Music.
I will make you a great nation, and you shall be a blessing to other nations. And in you, all families of this earth shall be blessed. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And you shall be a blessing to other nations. I will bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. And in you, all families of this earth shall be blessed. make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And you shall be a blessing to other nations. I will bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. And in you, all families of this earth shall be blessed. To the earth I give, in your birth I live, in your lungs I breathe, to your destiny, and the joy I bring, when the song I sing, as you hold my hand, I'm the great I am.
And that is The Great I Am, the Spirit Chaser remix by Musart. Yeah, Musart. Amazing group indeed. Amazing group. They didn't give us enough music, but they gave us absolutely amazing music when they did. So let's pass on the mic to Royce. Royce, welcome to Everything House Music. Please unmute. Okay, I'll go again. Royce.
Good evening. Sorry, I'm a little bit busy now. I'll join you later. I think I will make a talk later.
Okay, cool, Royce. No problem.
Alright.
Right,
Okay.
cheers, dude.
Yeah.
I think that was an accidental request.
I think so too. Richard, I wanna know. We in the modern times of things, the digital times. Um, in your regard, what has streaming done to your career? Has it been a good thing? Also for house music, especially house music, has it been a good thing for music all round? Also, thank you.
I suppose there are things about streaming that can be said to have been positive for music. Certainly, from myself as an artist, it has definitely broadened the reach to an audience that perhaps wouldn't otherwise be listening to what I'm doing. But it's also been a negative. It's had a massive negative impact on music as well, by the way that it's diluted everything to such a degree that a lot of musicians, a lot of artists are finding it very difficult, or they're simply not able to sustain a career under the present streaming model, because they're just not getting enough financial support back for the music that they're making to allow them to develop as artists and to produce more music. So I've got a massive love-hate relationship with streaming. I suppose I count myself lucky that I was able to sort of build the foundations of what I'm doing a long time ago, a time where there wasn't any streaming. So I've been able to kind of see past the situation a little bit and use it as a tool to help in areas of, my sort of development, without having to think about, am I getting money back from this? Which obviously we do all need money. We need to be able to reinvest into our what we're doing. But luckily, we've had things and done things and put things in place, and our business is 20 years old, and we've got a rich catalogue of music that has given us and has been very kind to us and looked after us very well. But yeah, streaming, I don't know. I think there has to be some changes sooner rather than later in remuneration for the music creators, because it's just not enough soon enough to allow artists to develop. That's the biggest issue I have with it. It is diluting music. It is devaluing music. But unfortunately, the streaming model is not going anywhere anytime soon. So we either choose to remove ourselves from it or somehow find a way to use it to our advantage. And I guess we're all still trying to figure that one out at the moment.
And with saying that, also, the state of music today, what's your state on generally just music, but also house music, because we in this dance music that we love so much. What do you reckon the state is today? And also, where do you see I mean house music in the next soulful house music in the next 10 years or so?
Well, I mean, the state of music generally is as equally shit and brilliant as it has been forever, really. There's just a much greater volume of it. In terms of soulful house, I mean, we are seeing a resurgence in the more soulful side of dance music and all the disco stuff. I think we're going to enjoy hearing a lot more of it over the next few years. But as we spoke earlier, you know, the cycle will require a shift in trend at some stage. What's next for us in terms of, you know, what is the next sort of, you know, popular music trend going to be? Who knows?
They can privilege me to talk anytime.
Mr. Richard, sorry for that. Sorry for that.
That's all
Please
right.
carry on.
Well, that just kind of provided a natural conclusion to what I was saying, really. Yeah, I think we're just gonna, you know, we're going to enjoy some great music over the next few years, and yeah, and then we'll just sort of brace ourselves for what's next.
I love it. I'm looking forward to what's next. I was looking forward to what's new. Even though there's a theory with us, especially in SA, like there's so much music that's getting released. So before the album comes out, perhaps on like the Thursday or so, when the promo is out, you like listen to it, and then when it comes out, you're like, "Ish, now it's boring because there's another one, and there's another one, there's another one." But yeah, so much music on our end. Let me share the mic with MG Bedford. Welcome to Everything House Music. Please unmute and give your thoughts today. Thank you.
Good evening. Yeah, I really enjoyed that little interview there. Really nice to hear kind of what drives you as a producer. I always ask this question to anyone I get the opportunity to. Which 3 plugins could you not live without? What's the first thing that you do load up when you start?
Well, I am a big fan of the Fab Filter stuff. The compressor is pretty decent. The EQs are generally very, very good. I don't know. I don't really have like my favorite 3 because I don't kind of. I'm one of these weirdos that I don't really have a template when I start a record because I don't know what that record is going to be. So, you know, the template might not be relevant. So I tend to start off with a full-on blank canvas. So if I'm working on a lot of vocals, like lead vocals, I really like using the SSL vocal strip. It's really simple. It's easy to use. I also use the Softube Console 1, which is I've got some nice bits on there. But no, there's not really like a top 3 of plugins as such. Purely because I'm not entirely sure how things are going to start when I get going.
Hey, that'll do. That satisfied my need to know where some of the sound comes from.
But you know, I'm very much a you know, just because I have lots of plugins. I have Fab Filter, I've got the Sound Toys, I've got the Slate Digital, I've got this, and I've got that, and I've got the other. But I like to sort of get the music into a good shape and a good overall state without having to intervene too much with plugins to start with. It's more of a I use a plugin that's more of a refinement than it is as a very obvious intervention in the process.
Yeah, I understand that. No, that's nice. It's a nice little window into how you produce, and that's probably why you come out with some of the sounds that you do, because you're doing the hard work first before anything else is lying on top of it. The second question, is really related to kind of the streaming piece that you were talking on. Have you kind of ventured into kind of Web3, NFT, blockchain, releasing music via any of those methods that are available?
I can honestly say I haven't as yet. I have been approached and I have had discussions. As it stands, I suppose I need to understand more about how things operate in that environment before I can take any plunge there. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I possibly am, because it's one of the things that musicians do is overthink absolutely everything. But I feel like I need to understand more about it before I can fully commit to being able to provide anything, in that sort of scheme.
Yeah, 100%. I might have to drop into your DMs and fill you in with a few people to speak to who are kind of leading the way in certain blockchains, and it just helps you build a little bit more of a Twitter community and get more listeners and get your work to more people, because there used to be a really strong community around house music in the UK, and unfortunately from like my perspective it's faded a little bit, but definitely within kind of Web3 and NFTs, it's starting to become more popular, and any electronic music in fact is really well received from lots of smaller communities, and there's good money to be made as a producer just to keep you topped up in between shows and gigs.
Oh, by all means, get into the DMs and give us a heads up on some stuff.
Awesome. That's me finished, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to ask the questions.
Thank you so much, MG Bedford. Thank you so much for coming through. Thanks for the submission and actually grabbing the mic. Shout out to you. Shout out to you. A few other people in the space are quite shy. I don't understand why, but I guess it's just one of those. We are at least 15 minutes before we close the space. So, Richard, I'd like to ask randomly, greatest artist of all time.
Oh gosh, that's a question. Greatest artist of all time. Can I choose a producer instead of an artist, as opposed to an artist?
Anything, please. Anything. I should have said musician, I guess. Right?
I think, again, this is not the greatest producer of all time, but just possibly one of my greatest individuals and contributions to music. And I have to say that, for just sheer diversity, that Quincy Jones has. Well, I mean, I don't really need to go into the details of the artists that he has produced and written with and helped define, but he's brought a lot of, like, for example, I don't know if you guys know, I know because I know Scott's lurking there, but there's an British artist called Jacob Collier, who, under normal circumstances, I'm fairly sure I probably wouldn't have started listening to, but his association with Quincy Jones and the way that he has taken this ridiculous musician and managed to create effectively a popular artist out of it is quite astonishing, because his music is, on the one hand, so unbelievably difficult to understand unless you are yourself a musician or have a very detailed and in-depth knowledge of music theory and harmony. But also, it is so incredibly accessible at the same time. It's an amazing combination, actually. And we all know that the Michael Jacksons, and there's been so many great records. It's just incredible to see and hear that is still feasible, to break the mold and to bring an artist out to the forefront who, at a very young age, has absolutely slayed the Grammys in a massive way. And I thoroughly enjoy listening to the music and the contributions he's made to other bands as well. And that is almost certainly in a large part down to the way that Quincy Jones has orchestrated everything behind the scenes. But I mean, in terms of my favourite, greatest artist, I mean, crikey, I listen to so much music, and I'm I would like to think that I'm very open to having anything dropped in front of me and being able to listen to it objectively and appreciate what's being done, no matter what the genre, no matter who the artist is or whatever. So I think I'm going to tactfully swerve naming my greatest artist of all time on that front, because there are so many and I get so much from so many, whether known or not.
Look at that, Mr. Richard Enjo, diving a question, but it's okay. It's okay.
Well, the thing is, it's all too easy to say the same old names, isn't it? Oh, it's this DJ, or it's that artist, or it's this. And, there's such an incredible amount of music out there, and whilst it is difficult to navigate through it all, some of the most beautiful music I've ever listened to is by an artist that is completely unheard of, and probably were just a one-off and never seen them again. And actually, a lot of that is down to streaming, because you can stumble across stuff, completely by accident. So I am swerving the question slightly, but there's great music out there. They're all the greatest artists in the world. That's what makes music so wonderful place to be involved in.
No problem. No problem at all. No problem at all. I think my last one before I give Lloyd, perhaps he's got his last remarks. You mentioned that you're releasing music quite soon. Could you give us dates? Because yes, we'd really like to have you on the Deep House Space. Please go for it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we've not, in terms of the Spirit Chaser album, we've not set the album date as yet, because even though it's finished and it's ready to go, it will still remain work in progress, I suppose. The first single will be coming out. I'm actually looking at the wrong calendar. I think it's due for the 17th of February, and that's with Diana Fearon on vocals. It's called Tonight. So that's going to be the first single from the new album, Always for Love. And then we will probably release a track each month until we hit sort of June time, and then we'll release the whole album. As it stands, the album has 12 tracks on it, but it may have 14 by the time we come to releasing it. We don't know. This is sort of a new experience for us, really. Rather than finishing an album and then manufacturing an album and then it's done. We can constantly tweak as we go along, and add and take away, and so we won't know exactly what the finished album is actually going to be like until we get to probably May time. In terms of what I'm doing in the studio myself, I've got about a gazillion tracks on the hard drive and new collaborations that I'm working on. And I'm just basically in the process of clearing the decks of some of the things that we've already signed or we've already finished producing. And then, by the wonders of social media, you can all find out when things are happening when I put the dates up.
Thank you for that. A question came in from Sabrina. She's asking, what do you look for when working with singers? Is it the tone, the vocal, lyric skills, or a combination of all three?
I think it's a combination of all of those things. I mean, in some circumstances, you will work with a singer who has the most gorgeous tone, the most gorgeous performance and phrasing, but their lyrical assets are not, and they may well admit that their lyrics are not their strongest thing. So then you might contribute to the lyrics or work with a totally different lyricist. But those situations are few and far between. I mean, there's, top line writers now tend to be the one-stop shop But obviously, in terms of what I'm listening for, the first thing I hear will be the tone of their voice and the way they perform and the way that the timing of phrasing and all that kind of thing is really important, because that can't be sort of rejigged. You know, if the lyrics, you know, don't quite work out how they're supposed to, or there's, you know, for whatever reason they're not quite right, those can always be done differently. But you know, it's definitely the performance aspect that is the number one for me.
Thank you so much for that. Hope Sabrina, hope you got well enough information from the answer.
I think Sabrina's actually, she's waiting for a backing track from me, actually.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I guess it's in the hard drive.
Yeah, it's in
Along
the
with
hard drive. It literally is. It's in the hard drive now.
cheers. Lloyd, I think this is the time now where we can just give some last remarks regarding today's space. So I'll pass on the mic to Lloyd first, and then we'll go back to you, Richard, where you can just give us your last remarks, perhaps regarding even where people can find you in terms of social media. If no one knows you in the space, I mean, I don't know, understand why they wouldn't know you, but you can share a few things where people can actually find your music in terms of streaming, or where can they buy anything. So, but for now, let me give Lloyd the mic first. Lloyd, unmute, brother.
I was scrolling through Richard's timeline, and he's asking, there's less duets in house music. I wanted to find out if you're talking about vocalists or producers.
I was specifically talking about vocalists. I don't think there are, but I know that they're tricky. You know, it's because you've got to take two totally different personalities and somehow marry them together in a way that it